Good day, everyone. I am Dr. Leonilo Capulso. I am the President and CEO of Yan Books Publication. And today I'm going to share some insights about a certain topic assigned to me during this International Multidisciplinary Conference on Organizational Accountability and Ethical Challenges. So allow me to share my screen. Okay, so once again, I am Dr. Leonilo Capulso. I'll be sharing about promotion of purposive learning, particularly during this time of COVID-19 or as we recover, as we try to, particularly in the Philippines, where now most of the classes are now back to face-to-face modality. So for this short sharing, some takeaways will be the discussion of the purpose of PPST. In the Philippines, this is the standard for teachers, professional teachers. We will be also discussing about purposive sampling as part of the domain of the PPST learning theories related to purposive learning and implication to teaching and learning. So for those who are not in the Philippines, PPST stands for Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. This is a public statement of what teachers need to know, value, and be able to do in their practice. And it has 4 career stages: the beginning teacher, proficient, highly proficient, as distinguished teachers, which is built on the National Competency-Based Teacher Standard. So that's basically talks about the standard for teachers in the Philippines. And it has different domains and strands and indicators. So particularly, it aims to set out clear expectations, particularly expectations among teachers on their career progression, particularly as beginning to distinguish practices, engage teachers to actively embrace and continuing efforts in attaining proficiency, and apply uniform measures to assess this performance of teachers. So particularly for the sharing, we are going to highlight on the learning environment in the teaching profession or in the teaching experience with the students. So in the second domain, it says, and it highlights the role of teachers to provide learning environment that are safe, secure, and fair, and supportive in order to promote learning responsibility and achievement. So particularly during this time of the internet, of advanced technology, while students are also now going back to their classroom, we are very particular of how these modalities would try to be properly integrated while trying to safeguard learning spaces among students. So if you try to look at the table, it tries to enumerates and explains the different responsibilities expected from teachers, from those who just entered the Department of Education or in the academy, up to the time they are a bit well-versed and they started already mentoring other teachers. So under learning environment, it has 6 strands, but I will focus on the promotion of purposive learning. How are we supposed to promote purposive learning in the classroom? So when we speak of purposive learning, basically it refers to the knowledge and skills acquisition which is designed with a clear purpose, goal, or objective in mind. So that's basically the highlight of purposive learning. So for us students, for us teachers who are dealing with students, we must be able to inculcate and to help our student appreciate, okay, a clear purpose, why they are doing, why they are going to school, and how later on they will be able to apply that in their own lives. So 2 important theories are applied in purposive learning. First, that neo-behaviorism and purposive behaviorism, which I'll be sharing very, very slightly. So when we speak of neo-behaviorism, it is a form of behaviorism that takes unobservable internal factors like cognition into account. So it's basically focuses on the cognition process and how the students learn. Also, people create mental maps on things they perceive. That's basically what we do. Every time we look at certain matter, certain area, for example, the teacher is presenting a new topic. So students started to create a mental map in the things that they saw. That is why if you try to go deeper into the theories of learning, you would realize that the more senses are used by the teachers in teaching the students, the higher the chances of retention. So these mental maps help them respond to other things, especially if they see similarity. You begin by trial and error, but later on becomes internally driven, or the cognitive perspective. So initially, the teacher would engage the student in a trial and error way of perceiving, of exposing students to reality, but later on that become internally driven, that students will be able to create mental frameworks by themselves. Purposive behaviorism, on the other hand, was introduced by Edward Tolman, a branch of theology, and it combines the objective study of behavior while also considering the purpose or goal of behavior. So there's now the intermarriage of objective study of behavior and the purpose of or goal of behavior. Tolman taught that learning, which is developed from knowledge about the environment and how the organism relates to its environment. Okay. So some of the important thoughts where Tolman theorizing has been called purposive behaviorism, and it's often considered the bridge between behaviorism and cognitive theory. So the student's attitude in relation to their own perception and understanding of things. According to Tolman's theory of sign learning, an organism learns by pursuing signs to a goal. Learning is acquired through meaningful behavior. So how do we know that learning happens? How do we know that students are learning? So what behaviorists say, what our researchers and experts say, learning takes place when there's a change in behavior. So from not knowing to knowing, okay? From not doing to doing. So there is learning when there is a change of behavior. So can learning occur even unobserved? As teachers, for example, how will we know that students are learning even though we don't realize that? Okay, even without reinforcement. So in the experiment of Tolman and the rat, no? So there's the three group of idiots or a wise rats. So group 1, there is no reinforcement, and group 2 with reinforcement. Group 3 with reinforcement on the 11th day. So what is the result? So if you try to look at the graph, no, the one in green are those which were never reinforced, and blue always reinforced, and the one in red was only later reinforced on the 11th day. So learning is always purposive and goal-oriented. Okay, so that's what we should realize, that an organism learns by pursuing signs to a goal. So for example, if a student knows why he is going to school, what is the purpose of going to school, more likely the students will be doing well inside the class. So the application that is always state the goal, no? For those who've been in the academy, I've been in the academy for 20 years. We know that students who are in the who are always motivated while they are doing things are more likely to behave and participate and engage in the class. This explains why every time the teacher would get inside the classroom, a teacher would always start with an objective, so that early on students will already be oriented and motivated what they're going to learn for this particular lesson, and later on how they're going to apply it. Latent learning, according to Tolman, learning can happen even without us knowing it. So sometimes we just don't realize students are actually learning. It's occurred yet unnoticed. So not all learning are observable. That is why as teachers, we have our own way of knowing it. Okay, we do some exercises, we do some performance tasks. But we should realize that even without this, students also might be learning already. But for us to justify everything, we have to do some performance tasks and activities to assess this learning. So, for example, in the experiments, rats, the third group, no motivation to show that they learned, but once reinforced was presented, abrupt change performance happened. So, at first, it seems there's no learning happening, there's no motivation. But when a reinforcement was introduced to them, there was an abrupt change. Okay, there was an abrupt change of behavior. So when you try to apply it when discussing a topic, for example, inside the class, consider what the students already know in order to facilitate maximum learning. That's why we also do some review to assess what the students already learned. And from there, we pick it up and then we continue to introduce a new lesson. So there's a pre-assessment test, simple oral assessment for us to know the status of the student, and that would also be a good signal where we're supposed to pick up and proceed. So intervening variable that are not readily seen but serve as determinant of behavior. Learning is mediated and is influenced by expectations, perceptions, presentations, needs, and other internal or environmental variables. So rat's hunger is the intervening variable. So what's the application? Present topic that are relevant to the needs of the students and will capture their interest. So teachers must be able to identify first, okay, what are the needs of student? That is why if you're, for example, using the Assure model, where teachers early on would identify the different learning styles and preference of the students, when you introduce a topic and activities, you are actually hitting on the interest level of the student. So that is why you have to create a relatable and fun activities in order to encourage learning. Okay, so rats in the third group were learning even without the reinforcement evidence that learning. So as to the cognitive maps, exposure to the maze allowed the rats to build mental models of the surroundings, which they quickly solved the maze. So if they're already familiar of how things would go, like in the maps, more or less when you are going to expose them to the real situation, they could easily adapt and find the way out. Okay, so these are internal representation of the external features of the landmark. So what's the application? A learner remembers new words by visualizing them represented in a memorable fashion that makes it easier and faster to recall this concept. So what are activities that we could introduce? Mind maps, visualization, so on and so forth. So how do we motivate students to learn? What motivates our students to learn? So there could be intrinsic motivation, so includes their fascination with the subject. That is why we should know what the students wants. And there are also advantages and disadvantages for that. So long-lasting and self-sustaining, while it's slow to affect behavior and can require special and lengthy preparation. Extrinsic motivation includes parental expectation, okay, expectation of other trusted role models, etc. And it also has its advantages and disadvantages. So what are the effects of motivation on the learning style? According to studies, okay, deep learners respond to the challenge of mastering a difficult and complex subjects. These are intrinsically motivated students. On strategic learners are motivated primarily by rewards. Okay, so you must be able to identify what students do you have inside the classroom so that you will be able to identify your own strategy. Okay, surface learners motivated by desire to avoid failures. So they avoid deep learning and see it as a risk behavior. So the chances are they normally stay away with that. So the suggestion help them gain confidence. So teachers must be able to help students develop that confidence. Strategies for motivating students. First, become a role model for your students. So must be able to teach or to walk our talk. We must be able to do what we are telling them. Get to know your students. The more we know our students, the easier for us to identify strategies and activities that will suit their needs. Use examples freely. Student could easily relate and understand given a lot of examples by the teachers. Use variety of student active teaching strategies also to eliminate boredom in the class and monotony. Set realistic performance goals. So that is when you are making an objectives in your lesson, you must be able to make it time-bound, simplistic, but at the same time, students must be able to see the relation of that to their real life. Place appropriate emphasis on testing and grading. As long as you are able to identify and assist students' performance, it need not to be long, but it's supposed to be effective. Be free with the praise and constructive criticism. So students also sometimes would likely to participate if they are properly reinforced. Give students as much control over their own education as possible. So teachers need not to be controlling. Students should have a freedom as long as the teacher is there to facilitate learning. So I think that's all. And I hope you are able to get something from what I shared. And I wish everyone a productive day from Beyond Books Publication here in the Philippines. Good day, everyone.